Hi, everybody. It's Allison from ACR Health. Welcome to our 23rd annual Hike for Life Wellness Summit. New this year, we're doing 23 days for 23 years. We are on day 15, and we're excited to have this presentation as part of our extended month-ish long program about community wellness. I wanted to take a pause just for a moment to acknowledge our sponsors, one in particular, but just a general note about how thankful we are for our sponsors that have stuck with us through the pandemic. And now as we reemerge into what is, quote unquote, normal life again, they have been with us and really been unwavering support. So a huge thanks in general. And then also specifically a thank you to Utica Coffee. Utica Coffee has worked with us for the past years on several fundraisers. They give a tremendous amount of proceeds back to us for every bag that we sell. I'll make sure that we throw the link to their fundraising order page so you can get some. It's delivered to you right to your door this year. And then we're able to apply those funds towards fundraising. Utica Coffee, if you're not from Utica or you haven't been to Utica Coffee, it's a fantastic place. And part of their mission is to reclaim and do responsible business development with historic buildings throughout Utica area. So we thank them for their support and check them out. I'll put that link in there shortly. Today, we're here with Shirley Wild, who's our nutrition health educator at ACR Health. And she's going to talk to us about getting friendly with food. Food is not our enemy, it's our friend. And she's going to take us through the basics of a well-balanced diet. So welcome, Shirley. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, guys. So I'm Shirley. So I've been at ACR Health for 6 years and some time now. All of that in the nutrition department. So I'm pretty excited. I've never really done one of the fundraisers before, other than walking some of the walks. So pretty excited. So I'm just going to jump right in. Today we're going to talk about getting friendly with food. Okay. So getting friendly with food, the basics of a balanced diet. So we're pretty much just going to go over the My Plate, which is like the new form of the food pyramid. So kind of like what we're supposed to be eating every day. I'll talk a little bit about snacks because that's my favorite thing. Talk a little bit about budgeting for all these things. Watch me go shopping. And then we'll make a snack together at the end. So here we go. So why is nutrition important? Seems pretty obvious, I think. Nutrition is vital for good health and overall well-being. Gives you energy, it gives you your essential vitamins and minerals and nutrients that help you literally grow and function properly. Helps you maintain a healthy weight, and I like that word maintain because we often focus on weight loss, but sometimes just maintaining, and some people are even trying to gain weight, and good nutrition can help us with all of those things. Nutrition helps prevent chronic illnesses like diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, as well as plenty others. And overall, it just provides us with energy and strength on a day-to-day basis. So for those of us who are maybe big habitual breakfast eaters, if one day you miss breakfast, you probably really notice something like that because you missed out on the energy that you're used to getting every morning. Just a second. Sorry, guys, I'm rearranging. There we go. Okay. So you need food every day, but what happens when you pick bad food or you don't eat? I know the answers are right in front of us, but does anyone have a particular thing that happens to them if you skip a couple meals? How are you feeling?
I get super hangry.
That's my favorite answer. People can get so hangry. Later on, I use the word emotional, but so overall, you're feeling hungry, you have less energy, you become hangry. You might feel weak or even fall asleep. I don't know if you miss a couple meals when you finally get the chance to sit down, if maybe you've ever experienced the like, oh my God, I cannot get back up type feeling. Having trouble working and thinking. So you skip breakfast and lunch and towards the end of the workday, it can be literally hard to open up an Excel sheet and follow it correctly. You can gain or again lose too much weight. You can feel bloated. If choosing inappropriate foods is a habit of yours, you can increase your risk for chronic diseases, and it may lead to poor oral health as well. Did I miss anything happen to you guys that I didn't cover? Okay. So this is a picture of the MyPlate. As of the year 2011, which you can see down at the bottom, this is the USDA's newest version of what most of us probably grew up with, which was the food pyramid. So we got rid of the food pyramid in 2011 and replaced it with this. Personally, I'm a really big fan of it. It looks just like a typical plate or bowl that any average person can picture. They spent several years putting it together, trying to make it something that all people of all ages could just kind of look at and pretty easily understand. Something else I really like about it is that they kind of put dairy off to the side. They did that partly because literally drinking a glass of milk is above and beyond the most common way most Americans think about getting their dairy. Also, though, dairy allergies are extremely common. So if you are someone who has to opt out of the dairy group due to lactose intolerance, just remember it is off to the side because it is replaceable. The main goals of the dairy group are to get your vitamin D and your calcium. So through correct supplementation or through eating the correct vegetables and fruits, you can often get a lot of those vitamins back into your diet. Any questions on the MyPlate? So before I click away from it, you can see pretty much that every day about half of what you're eating should be fruits and vegetables. The other half can be grains and proteins. Grains, we are also including things like mashed potatoes and sweet potatoes. And don't forget that proteins does not always just mean meat. It can also be beans and peas, soy products, lentils, eggs, stuff like that. Any questions? Okay. So we're just going to go ahead and run through each of the food groups. It is fairly basic as we're talking about it, but we used to call the food groups a variety of different things. Like some of us might have grown up calling it the carbohydrate group, or remembering that the top of the pyramid used to have like sugars and fats at the top and stuff like that. And that has all changed. So we'll go through some of these just one by one. So the first food group is fruit. So any fruit or 100% fruit juice counts as part of the fruit group. It counts as fruit pretty much no matter what you do to it. If you can it, freeze it, mash it up, cut it up, put it in a smoothie, it all still counts as fruit. The only time it might stop really counting in your diet is when you start mixing it with tons and tons of white sugar. So if you eat a slice of cherry pie at 10 p.m. before bed, it might not count as a quarter cup of fruit for the day. But any other form pretty much counts. And you want to, again, make sure that half of your day is fruits and vegetables. So make sure you're getting your fruits in. Vegetables is also really easy to talk about. Pretty much any vegetable you can think of and anything you can do to it counts as a vegetable. People do often forget about vegetable juice, which does also count as a serving of vegetables. So if you like tomato juice or carrot juice or any of those mixed V8 juices, those all count towards your vegetable consumption every day. Most people, regardless of your gender or your age, need between 2.5 and 3.5 cups of vegetable a day. So it's all fairly similar. Any questions on fruits or vegetables or fruits or vegetable juices? Okay. So protein is a little more wide range. So I think a lot of times when people say protein, what's the first thing you guys think of? I saw you mouth it, but you're on mute, but meat, right? So chicken, red meat, turkey, poultry, all that stuff is usually the first things that we think of. And those definitely do count as protein. So when you go to the grocery store, really anything in the butcher counter, anything at the deli is all going to be in the protein group. But what else counts as protein would definitely be eggs. Obviously you find those in the back of the store, not usually with meat. They're a little different. Vegetarians will still usually eat eggs. Also soy products. So that's the main, I would say the main product that we use to substitute for meat. So those always count. Your nuts and your beans and your peas and your seeds all also count as protein. So it's really easy to get protein in, especially I think in the years that we're living in right now. I feel like you go to the store and everywhere you see added protein, extra protein, 10% more protein than before. So it's a very easy food group to make sure that you're getting enough of every day. Any questions about protein? So grains is the one that I keep for towards the end because it gets 2 slides. So grains cover a huge variety of food. So any food made from wheat, from rice, from oats, from cornmeal, barley, or any other cereal or pasta grain that you can think of is a grain product. So your breads, your pastas, your oatmeals, your box cereals, tortillas and chips, grits, all of those. Did I even put corn on this list? Corn products are also grains. So corn tortillas all count as grains. Grains more or less come in 2 groups. There's white grains and there's whole grains, excuse me. So basically white and brown. The next slide will kind of get into the differences a little bit. So I'll skip that for now. But mostly you want to make sure that about 1/4 of your diet consists of grains. And that is because that's largely where our carbohydrates are. And carbohydrates are what give us bursts of energy. Amy's over here laughing at me because she knows this is my favorite picture to show people. She was like, of course you put it in your PowerPoint.
It's my favorite.
So this is what a whole grain looks like. And I really like showing it to people because mostly when you go to the store, you see whole grain, you see white grain, and you don't even really think about what the 2 are. You just grab the one that you've always grabbed, right? More or less. So I just like to dive into it a little bit. So a whole grain is when you take a grain, I'll pick on wheat, and they do what they do and they turn the entire piece of wheat into your bread, and it's brown because it's got all this stuff in it. The white bread, they took the wheat, they got rid of a couple pieces, and then they took what was left and it came out as white bread. So what are those pieces? So the easiest way to think about a whole grain is to think about a piece of popcorn. So kind of picture this whole grain in front of us as a piece of popcorn. So if it were cooked and it popped and it turned inside out, and now you have that white fluffy piece of popcorn, right? So the white fluffy popcorny piece is the endosperm that you see there. It's a big white part in the middle. Both whole grains and white grains always have the endosperm in the finished product. It's white, it's fluffy, it's yummy. It made it into both. The endosperm does have plenty of nutrients. That's why I don't really like when people say that white bread is bad for you. When you're eating it in the correct the correct portions, it's not necessarily bad for you. It does have nutrients. It just has fewer nutrients than the whole grain bread would have. So the endosperm's in both. The bran and the germ are typically only going to be in your whole grain products, So when you think about that piece of popcorn, the bran, the outer shell, is that like plasticky piece that gets jammed up against your teeth. So that's in the whole grain bread. It got thrown in there with everything else. There's tons and tons of nutrients in the bran. It's sort of like the skin of a fruit. So that's where about half of the nutrients of the entire whole grain is. So you get way more nutrients in the whole grains. The germ also goes into the whole grain, and that's like that dead center piece of the popcorn that's still a little hard, even though the popcorn's cooked all the way. And there's also like 10% of the nutrients of the grain in there as well. So all of that makes it into the whole grain. Whereas the rest of it, the endosperm is the only one that goes into white grains. So that's the difference. The USDA typically would like to see all people split their grains pretty evenly between whole and white rather than eating all white grains all the time. But the more whole grains, the better. So if you're eating only white grains right now, might be time to start working some whole grains in. If you're already somebody who pretty much only chooses whole grains, you don't necessarily have to back up and start putting white grains in. You're doing pretty well. So any questions about that? Cool. You guys are quiet. So just like before, dairy is kind of the last one. So what counts as dairy? So all fluid milk products and any food made from milk, like yogurt, cottage cheese, ice cream, are all in the dairy group. Calcium fortified soy products and or nut products are also in the dairy group right now. So things like almond milk, soy milk, vegan, vegan cheeses made from different nuts or pea flours, stuff like that, all still counts as dairy right now. They are almost always fortified with the correct nutrients to balance it out to the way that most Americans eat. Foods that are made from milk that have little to no calcium got pulled out of the dairy group. So cream cheese, heavy cream, sour cream, and butter, even though they are made of milk, are not technically counting as dairy. They got processed just enough that all the good nutrients got pulled, vitamin D and calcium got pulled out of them. So they don't technically count. Cream cheese, unfortunately, isn't really doing much for you in the morning. I know. But pretty much all your other cheeses still made it, so maybe you can just swap it out. The USDA does recommend that most of your dairy group choices be fat-free or low-fat. However, I do like to remind people that if your goal is to gain weight and you have a healthy level of cholesterol, it is okay to choose full-fat products more often. Any dairy questions?
What about ice cream?
Ice cream does count as dairy, and that's really funny because it obviously gets a bad rap as being junk food. Ice cream is really only junk food because we filled it up with all sorts of other junk foods and then we ate the whole carton instead of the between quarter and half cup that is usually the serving. So if you are just eating a quarter cup of vanilla ice cream, you're usually, unfortunately, you are getting a little more sugar than we'd like to see, but you are getting a lot of protein, usually a good amount of vitamin D and calcium, some other stuff like that. Good question.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Shirley, does fat-free and low-fat milk, does it have the same amount of calcium,
Yes.
vitamin D?
Yep.
Yes.
Pretty much just altering the lactose levels and then the literal saturated fat levels, excuse me. That's what I meant to say. So like I personally, well, actually currently I'm drinking oat milk just because I switched and I thought it was good. But before that I was drinking whole milk, but before that I was drinking 1%. And I don't feel like I had many health changes between the three. Feeling pretty much the same. So
Shirley, how do you feel about protein shakes?
Like you're making a shake with a lot of protein in it, or like you purchased a bottled protein shake?
You purchased a bottled protein shake.
I have mixed feelings. I do think that when people really need them, that they are good. Like there are people who really, really need to gain weight and they really need to do it now and they have no appetite and they can't afford the procedures that go along with just getting food into your stomach. So as far as having like a quick option, they are good. They are typically like a lot higher in sugar than you'd like to see. Even the ones that are the very healthiest, like in order to cover up the taste of all that nutrition in one little bottle, there is usually a lot of sugar in there. So if somebody needs a shake with a lot of protein because they'd like to gain weight or for whatever reason, and they don't have much of an appetite or much time or anything like that, if they have the energy and the budget to make their own, I usually recommend that. And I'm actually going to do smoothie stuff at the end so we can kind of talk about how altering that could have more or less protein in it. Good question. So the current dietary recommendations. So the next set of recommendations are actually supposed to come out this year. They don't typically change too much every 5 years though, so I would imagine that this will be very similar for the next 5 years. So right now the USDA recommends that a healthy eating pattern include a variety of vegetables of all colors. So I don't know if you've seen before, like Eat the Rainbow, stuff like that. There used to be commercials. So different colored vegetables typically have different sets of nutrients in them. So the more colors you can get in the day, the better. A variety of fruits of all colors for the same reason. Grains, at least half of which are whole grains. Dairy, which does again include fortified products. Like later I'll be using a lot of oat products that are fortified with vitamin D and calcium. A variety of lean protein rich foods like seafood, lean meats and poultry, eggs, beans and peas, nuts and seeds, and soy products. It wouldn't kill you to eat some red meat here and there, but they definitely don't recommend eating it daily or even like 4 or 5 days a week. Red meat should really start being more of a treat yourself kind of thing. Try your best to use oils in place of butters or lards. Hopefully nobody's using lards anymore. Give me a call, we'll talk about it. Try to avoid added sugars and saturated fats as much as you can. Added sugars will be on some food labels these days, which is really great. It's not on all of them, but take a look. I'm a nerd, so I think it's very fun when it's on there. Saturated fats will always be on a food label. Typically, you'll find saturated fat in animal products. So that'll be in your cheeses and in your eggs and your meats and stuff like that. Excuse me. And the last one is try to consume less than 2,300 milligrams per day of sodium. So again, check out the food labels and just make sure you're doing some basic math throughout the day. You're going to find the most sodium in your shelf-stable pre-made foods typically. So if they have options in the canned aisle for like salted and unsalted, always try to go unsalted. It'll just make your life a little easier. When it comes to things like boxed mac and cheeses and ramen noodles and stuff like that, just keep in mind that they might have close to your whole day's worth of sodium in them. So if you're going to treat yourself to one, definitely balance it out with the rest of your day. Any questions about those? Okay, so snacks are my favorite thing, and they are definitely very important. So the My Plate is representative of meals, and depending on your lifestyle, your diet, all those other things, you should be eating between 2 and 6 meals a day. Obviously, they'd be of varying sizes. And if you're leaning towards 2 or 3 meals a day, then you should probably also be having a snack or 2. So snacks should be placed into your daily schedule. They should include 1 or more food groups from the My Plate. So an apple is an okay snack, but an apple with peanut butter is a really good snack because you've got fruit and protein there. Snacks should be nutrient-dense foods that have essential vitamins and minerals. So that apple with peanut butter is probably going to be a better snack for you than the little 4-ounce bag of Doritos, right? I don't think I need to explain that. Unfortunately, the Doritos don't really have much real corn or real cheese going on anymore. Snacks should include complex carbs, which are whole grains, lean proteins, fruits, veggies, and dairy at varying amounts, obviously. So a couple other common examples would be like cheese and crackers, celery and hummus. What's another one? Yogurt and granola, stuff like that. Anyone have a favorite healthy snack that they like to eat?
My go-to is cashew.
Oh, I love cashews.
Unsalted, unsugared cashew.
Yep, I like them with craisins. I always buy the 2 and just eat like a little 2-ingredient trail mix. Yep, you'll see
That's
it.
good.
You'll see it coming up.
Like grapefruit.
Grapefruit? That's a great one. Do you put sugar or salt on it, or you just eat it the way it is? Nice. I was never a fan, so glad to hear it. So again, this is the My Plate. So I just want to throw it up while we thought about snacks real quick. So some snacks can have even like 3 ingredients. Like anyone ever make like ants on a log for a kid, like celery, peanut butter, and raisins. That's got 3 of the food groups. So you can get into it. If you get more than 3 food groups, you usually start getting into like, might as well make a meal, right? So you typically want between 2 and 3 in every snack. So why do snacks have to be healthy? So kind of throwback to 20 minutes ago. So snacks like soda and candy and chips and cookies that are high in sugar and salt can result in fatigue, that hangry feeling, pretty immediately. Things like a heart rate increase. If you eat like those little bags of Fritos, I know I get like heartburn, inability to think clearly. You're kind of like buzzing on your sugar high for a little bit. So if you have to do something like a vending machine snack, or if you work with clients or family members who are out and about and a lot, I like to remind people that lots of vending machines now have pretty decent trail mix options, excuse me. Pretzels are not usually the worst thing in there. Pretzels are a decent option. Granola bars, and the more crumbly they are, usually the healthier they are for you. The more chewy they are, they're not really that good for you most of the time. But those are some decent options. Sometimes you'll even see like V8s or 100% juices. You see orange juice a lot now. So those are all decent vending machine type options if you're out there and you need to get something real quick. Okay, so now what? So you have to be healthy because I told you to. So how do you do it? So here's what I do. So every month, and I really do this every couple of weeks, I've moved on to usually doing it just like on a phone note or in a journal or something like that. But these sheets, if you actually just Google My Plate calendar, if they pop right up on the internet, if you like the way they look. I can be kind of type A, so I used to these were really helpful when I first started. So you make both a calendar and a grocery list, or whatever else works for you, you know, if just one or the other works for you or whatever. I made both so you could see both. So this is kind of like a week in the life. So they let you plan out your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and your snacks. If you look at snacks, you'll notice that I put 2 on every day. Because who just eats one? What do you do after 10 o'clock? I need one more snack. So, so I went through and I thought really realistically about my week. So some of you were on earlier when I mentioned I have a second job. So you see I get away with some free salad and pizza dinners during the week, which is awesome. Works really well for budgeting. And then you'll also see that on a Friday night, I got pretty realistic and I'm just going to order out. Like I'm not going to probably cook most Friday nights. So I stopped pretending that I was going to. Everything else, I kind of try to plan ahead for. So breakfast, I kind of have 2 or 3 options here. I will either eat granola with oat milk and a banana, or I will eat oatmeal with craisins, or I will eat granola with yogurt and craisins. So it's kind of my breakfast throughout the week. And you'll see those same ingredients down in the snacks kind of spread around. For lunches and dinners, I pretty much got the 6-pack of peppers at the store, and I did 3 Mexican stuffed peppers and 3 Italian stuffed peppers. And then I just bought bag salad and some chicken breasts and filled in the other days with those for lunches and maybe a dinner. No, just lunches. And you'll see some of those ingredients pop up in snacks again, like the last leftover pepper slices. I can eat with cheese a couple times. I've got a couple bananas with almond butter down here because I would have a couple extra bananas. Because not only do I try to plan, but I try to plan pretty budget friendly. So I try to buy things that I'm going to use all week that weren't very expensive to begin with. So then, very fun for my type A brain, you get to make a color-coded grocery list. But again, you can just do this in a note in your phone or in your head or wherever is easiest for you and your lifestyle. So I looked at my little calendar and I kind of put down every ingredient that I would need for it. When I went shopping, I didn't quite need all of this. I had some of it in the house. Like I already had brown rice. I already had a ton of frozen fruit, so I didn't have to buy any. A couple of the canned like beans and stuff I already had. So I only had to buy like 2/3 of this stuff, but I put it all down so you guys could see. Even though every day had 3 full meals and 2 snacks, the grocery list really isn't that long. It all fit in like 2 paper bags. So. And again, if you like this one better, if you just Google like USDA My Plate grocery list, this pops right up in the image search and comes right in a printable PDF. So they make it super easy. So next up, you will see me budgeting in action. So last spring, right before COVID, Amy and I went to Wegmans with my lists, which were different at the time. I will give that caveat. I was cooking a little differently at the time. But we went with my list and we budget shopped me through the store. And I do just want you guys to see that it's pretty easy to buy healthy food on a budget when you take the time to plan. So I've got just like a little 6-minute video. And this will be a little meta because I'll be watching because I've shown this on Zoom before. So here we go. Right at the beginning, the audio cuts out for like 2 seconds, but don't panic, it comes.
Here we are at Wegmans. We've got our list in hand, and I think we're ready to roll. We're gonna start in produce. I'd really like to tackle perimeter shopping a little bit while we're here. So we'll start in produce, go around the edges of the store, go through the aisles at the very end, and see how we do. So when you're shopping, it's important to consider convenience pricing. For example, you could get onions pre-chopped for $2.50. I really feel like I need that extra dollar, so for $1.84, I'm gonna get whole onions and just suffer through the chopping on my own. So now we need ground turkey. So when you get to ground meat, sometimes unit pricing can be really helpful. Here you can see that a 3-pound box is $2.99 per pound. A 1-pound container is $4.69 a pound. So per ounce or per pound, it's cheaper to get 3 pounds of turkey. That being said, I've got my meal planner done for 2 whole weeks, and throughout that time, I still won't get through that much turkey. So I'm gonna take the money loss and I'm gonna get the 1-pound package. That's what works best for me and my household.
Food safety tip, make sure you put your meat at the bottom of the cart so it doesn't drip.
So here we are in the yogurt section to do a little more unit pricing together. So here I looked at my recipe planner and I'm gonna need about 10 servings of yogurt to get me through the week between my breakfast, my snacks, and my chili toppings. So I have 2 options here. I can get 10 1-serving yogurts for 69 cents each, or I can get 1 yogurt that has as many servings that I need for $3.74. 10 cups of this will cost me almost $7, so I'm gonna cut my price in half and get the big blue one.
Don't forget to check your eggs for cracks.
So hard to open.
So we've made it to my favorite aisle, the ice cream aisle. A really important budgeting tip when you're buying things like this is to think about the store brand. So here you can see Breyers is $3.99, Turkey Hill is $2.99, up to $3.49. We've got a $4.99 for Perry's. But if you keep going and you get to the Wegmans brand, you'll see it's the cheapest option at $2.49.
Make sure you use your store's membership card to get last-minute deals.
Welcome back to the office. I thought we'd just come back and do a little recap on the budget and see how we did when we actually went shopping. So if you recall, our goal was to spend $73 or less. We went and we got the week's worth of stuff, and we actually only spent $58.15. So we came in super under budget, which is really awesome. I did go ahead and add in the price of oil and garlic. We didn't buy those things at the store because I had them both at home. But I'll add them on, pretend I didn't have them, just to see what we would have spent. So oil is $2.79 and garlic is $1.99. Those are based on Wegmans' website because that's where we shopped. So had we bought those, we would have spent $62.93, which is still $10.07 below the budget. So we did a great job. We could have spent that extra $10 on a couple extra purchases like lotion or chocolate, something fun like that. Or we can drop it into our savings if we manage to be that under budget consistently. That could really bump up our savings after a few months. So there's a bunch of different things you could do with that. It's really exciting to come in under budget for a whole week's worth of groceries. Don't forget that we didn't buy any spices on this trip. I have a couple at home, but more importantly, when you're a client of our program, nutrition can always provide you with spices. So don't feel like you have to go out there and spend $5 and $6 on parsley and oregano when you can come in and get them from your educators for free. So I wanted to look at our final total of $62.93. I broke that down over 7 days, and for each day of the week, you only spent $8.99 on food. So you got all 3 meals and 2 snacks for $8.99. If you break that down even further, that means each meal costs about $2.25, and each snack only costs about $1.12. Throughout the whole week, that's pretty cheap. You know, a lunch out, even at the very cheapest place, let's say McDonald's, usually your entree is $1, your side is $1, and your drink is $1, so it's $3. So we've already spent less and gotten a lot more out of it. We have much more nutrient-dense foods here. So I think we did really well. Good luck when you try it yourself.
Fun, right? So that was our trip. I do just want to make a note that obviously not everyone who sees this will be in my little nutrition program. So I want to remind everyone that my next best advice for spices is that the spices at the Dollar Tree are just as good as anywhere else. There's no reason not to pick them up at the Dollar Tree if you need them, especially if it's something you don't have on hand in your house. That's probably because you don't use it that often. So even if it's a little bit smaller, you'll probably still get exactly what you need out of it. If you're not near a Dollar Tree, usually places like the Family Dollar and the Dollar General, they're like $2. So they're still not bad at all. And Aldi is also very cheap. So there are lots of good places to get spices that aren't always as expensive as places like Wegmans and Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and stuff. Okay, so in a second, we're going to flip around and we're going to make a smoothie pop, which is one of the snacks that were on my little snack chart. So I need to get them ready for the week. So I'm going to flip around and Amy and I will do this. I am not Martha Stewart, so this will be a little bumpy. But here we go. I think it'll be fun. So we're doing basically a smoothie that we put into a little popsicle machine maker. What are they called? A little popsicle freezer thing.
Yeah.
So let me just grab my blender and we will rock and roll. Something like that, yeah. I have a dad who really understands the meaning of Black Friday, so I'm very lucky to have this ninja. All right, so I'm gonna leave the little ingredient list up so that you guys can see, and I will probably go a little out of order of the way that they're listed, but that is just fine, obviously. So Amy, I'm gonna start with the milk and the yogurt, please. Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a whole cup of oat milk. Some people, when they're making a batch the size that I'm making, will just do more like half a cup. But because I'm not drinking this as a smoothie and I'm freezing them, I'm okay with it being a little looser up front. So I shook my milk up because again, this is oat milk, not cow's milk. But as you can see, making smoothies is very of your choice. So you can use pretty much any milk that you like. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Half a cup.
For the yogurt, I'm going to get its own little cuppy out, so I don't have to reuse that. So oat milk, yogurt is very, very thin also. So if you're using a really thick yogurt, like a Greek yogurt, you might want to use a little less or a little more depending on how thick you want your smoothie to be. So I'm doing half a cup. So for my fruit, I'm doing raspberries and blackberries together from Wegmans. If you're really store savvy, you'll see pretty much all my stuff is either Wegmans or Aldi brand. I'm a big fan. How much should I say this doing? So I'm going to do a whole cup of fruit, so I'll do half a cup of each. I use frozen fruit because I live alone, and so when I buy fresh fruit, I don't always get through it all the time. But obviously, you could use fresh. You even could use canned. If you have fruit in the house that's canned in like heavy syrup and you've been avoiding it, you can always put it in like a strainer in under running water for 60 seconds, and that cuts a bunch of the sugar off of it. You could always do the same thing with canned vegetables for their salt content. So Amy cut the banana up but left it in half the peel. This is why you always call in an assistant. Look at that. Oh, okay. I will do the spinach next. I'll rinse my hands off real quick. They're raspberries. So I cook with spinach constantly, so I happen to know that a big handful is a full cup. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do like a small medium handful of spinach. So it's about half a cup. If you are not savvy with your hands in the spinach, obviously you just do a loose cup in the measuring cup. So a lot of people get lost when I add the greens. That's where they draw the line. So I want to remind you that if you're not ready for the greens in your smoothie, you don't have to jump right into them. It also doesn't have to be spinach. Some people like to do kale. I think kale's a little too dark usually. I like spinach. It's nice and light. I feel like it hides in all foods. That's why I use it so often. And for chocolate chips, unfortunately, we're just going to do a quarter of a cup. It's going to be the least of all the stuff. Chocolate chips are optional, and the type of chocolate chips are also up to you. I use dark chocolate. If I were doing a more tropical flavored smoothie, I might skip the chocolate chips, but because it's raspberry and blackberry, I think it's going to be good. Can I just have a spoon out of that drawer? And then the last ingredient is any kind of like peanut butter. I personally, I don't like peanuts or peanut butter, and I never have. So I grew up not really eating like PBJs or anything like that. But luckily now they make all the nuts into butter. So I buy cashew butter. Sometimes I buy almond butter, but I just love cashews. I think they're the best. So I buy cashew butter. But they do have almond butter. I've recently seen walnut butter. I've also seen mixed nut butter. So lots of options are out there. And that's 2 tablespoons.
Yep.
Okay. 1 big blob. Oh, I'm gonna have to get messy with this. Two big blobs. All right. So then we're just going to go ahead and pop the lid on. So I blended it up. I am going to just pull out a rubber spatula and kind of throw all the little crumblies and bits of spinach that flew back up down. So now we've got it all blended up. I'll kind of bring it up so you can see the only little like chunkies you can see are the bits of chocolate chips. Everything else kind of smoothed itself together. So Amy, will you just show them what we're using?
Mm-hmm.
So I own one of these little popsicle guys that you can get at like any Dollar Tree, Walmart, anywhere else. So we are just going to go ahead and pour these in. And I'm going to turn the camera so you can see it. Amy's doing it in the sink for me. And I'd say like just, yeah, you're a pro. So this is perfect because it makes 6, and I put 1 on each of 6 days of the week next week. Actually, no, I take that back. I put 1 on each of 5 days of the week next week because I'm totally going to eat one tonight. And I've done this a couple times before with different variations of fruit and almond/cashew butter, and I've never been disappointed yet. So this is one of my go-to celebrating that it's finally nice out snacks.
How long does it usually take to set?
So that also depends on how thick you make it. Since I make it pretty thin, they should be good. What time is it? 7:45. They should be good by 10 o'clock. So I'll have a good movie snack for the evening. So Amy will pop those on. And then I'll put them in the freezer and they will be good to go. So that is a healthy snack on a budget.
Oh.
So that is most of what I have for today. Do you guys have any questions?
I haven't received any questions in the chat, but I have a few of my own
Okay.
because I find nutrition to be fascinating because I grew up on fish sticks and chicken nuggets, right? I mean, my mom, not the world's most ingenious chef, and I remember the food pyramid, but it didn't make sense. And so I don't think I ever learned about proper nutrition until into the very high multiple digits, right? And so I often think, if we learned more of the basically everything that we've been talking about during this wellness summit. So what are your thoughts on these diets that just eliminate whole food groups and what that teaches or reinforces or does wrong?
A lot of thoughts on diets and dieting. I think we focus a lot on dieting for weight loss and stuff like that. And I think we often take quick results to mean like big success when it doesn't necessarily. So I think there's a lot of concerns with dieting. I think that and again, I eat meat and I eat seafood. I don't have any dietary restrictions. But I think most vegan and vegetarian diets can both be made to be very, very healthy and perfectly. I don't know what else I want to say about that. I think they can work out just fine. I think a lot of the quick diets we see, like fully cutting out carbs or fully cutting out certain types of fat, not only is really difficult, but is also something that's really hard to do long term. And is also something that I think is very difficult considering the benefits that it reaps, I guess. The benefits do not match the work that goes into it, in my opinion. That's what I'm trying to say. And also with things like the keto diet and stuff like that, I do have some concerns with like long term. But again, I mean, if people are monitoring the types of fat they're eating and stuff like that versus people who aren't, a lot of it goes into a person's thought process on their diet more than just the diet itself, I guess.
Right. And what he suggested was that there is no one diet that is right for everyone, so that it's understanding and becoming more conscious and aware about your own body and what works and what doesn't work and applying more of that.
Yes, and I would agree with that. Like I said before, I think everyone should be eating between 2 and 6 meals a day, which is a pretty big variant, and between 1 and 3 snacks a day, which is a pretty big variant, but it really depends on your lifestyle and what goes into those meals and stuff like that.
I really appreciate your message about mindful eating and mindful planning. The fact that when you plan out your meals for the week, you're not running into Wegmans 3 or 4 times and grabbing a handful of this for convenience, but you actually eat less when you eat better.
Yes.
And from my experience, because it's planned out, you know what you have, your portion controlled, and it's not all on the fly. So enough about my question. There are a couple questions in the chat. So how do you feel about food combining apples and cheese as opposed to peanut butter?
Eat what tastes good. Eat what you like. Honestly, I know that there are certain diets out there that say you shouldn't be mixing certain things. But I mean, what else? If you eat the apple and then 3 minutes later you eat the cheese, is it any different? Eat what tastes good and eat what you like. That's definitely my opinion. And if all you like is Doritos, then I'm really sorry. Maybe you have to start making some changes.
Right.
But
maybe cut out one bag a day.
yes,
replacing
switch
it
one
with
thing out.
Well, and that's what also I think is daunting for people, is making these big changes in diet sometimes seems drastic. But just thinking about replacing your snacks, or just thinking about getting rid of those sodas, or that one small, not tiny and not easy change, but definitely just one.
Yes. I'm a
Um,
big proponent of baby steps and of harm reduction, one thing at a time.
Now, I have a question. I'm not sure if this question is a serious question because I don't know any problems with this food. But one question is, what foods besides okra should we absolutely avoid?
Well, I like okra.
It did sound like a personal, like there's something personal
A little
taste
bit.
involved, right?
Honestly, I really almost never tell people to avoid hardly anything entirely. You know, if your favorite thing in the whole world is, I can't even think of a food that's at that. I don't know, like a bacon double cheeseburger or something. And if you
Deep fried Twinkie at the New York State
3
Fair.
days a year or something, like go ahead. It's not that often. The one thing I do try to say, if you're going to avoid anything, is to avoid trans fats, which unfortunately is kind of a variety of foods. But trans fats, as a type of fat, did not exist until like the 70s. It was invented in like a chemistry lab. The whole reason when it was invented is to help keep food on the shelves longer. And within 15 or so years, there is hard science that trans fat is much worse for us than most of the other fats. So try to avoid that as best you can. Luckily, you're only going to really find that these days in things like a Twinkie or a ho-ho. But just take a look at your food labels before you buy stuff.
Right. Anything you would take for the zombie apocalypse, probably not appropriate to eat during
Although, if we're in the zombie apocalypse, eat whatever you can get your hands on.
right. Eat those shelf-stable Twinkies. I mean,
Mhm.
do what you need to.
Trans fats are the only thing that come to mind that I hardline try to tell people to avoid.
And so for example, myself, I'm coming out of COVID, which was super uber stressful. And I developed a lot of bad eating habits as a form of comforting my misery. And so now I'm past, we're getting past COVID and I'm getting past the misery. So what's your advice to me of, switching gears and paying more attention to balanced diet?
It kind of goes back to baby steps, I think. I'll keep picking on Doritos because I guess that's the theme. Let's say that was your thing and it was your comfort food. I would say, switch to a regular tortilla chip and a queso. And then once you're comfortable there, a regular tortilla chip with a homemade queso. And then, and keep going a little bit healthier. Or like if your thing was Oreos, like, okay, so maybe you buy some dark chocolate and you eat some dark chocolate with some berries or something, and that's your chocolate fix. Stuff like that. I don't think cutting it out straight up is usually going to be that helpful. Eventually you will end up at the corner store.
Yeah. You get your will. Well, again, another theme of the talk that we had with Dr. Ojabelli was if it's moderation and being able to not penalize or shame yourself for treating yourself to that special thing.
Or also, I like to say just whenever you can, if you don't feel like taking away something, just try adding something. So like I got into a little bit of a cooking rut at one point and I was eating a lot of boxed mac and cheese, which I will say is Annie's mac and cheese. I pay the extra 50 cents for it to be like better. And after a while I did start at least just like dumping a bag of frozen broccoli in there and eating it all together. So you can doctor things up in small ways that do matter. Eat as much as the mac and cheese because you're getting a little fuller on the broccoli, and I don't have to explain why broccoli is good for us probably. So small changes like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shirley. We unfortunately are, of course, out of time, but I really appreciate you just sharing the basics. So thank you so much for sharing your passion clearly for food. So with that, I thank you again. Be well. Thank you for your support. Take care.